Hello, my name is Journey McBride, and I welcome you all to Soldadera, Creative Research in the Archives of the Mexican Revolution, featuring UCR Professor Jennifer Doyle and renowned artist Nao Bustamante. This event is part of the Faculty Profiles in Research, Art, and Innovation series hosted by the UCR Library. Now, before we get into our main event for the evening, I want to cover just a couple of housekeeping items. Now, this event is being recorded. The live stream will be available within 48 hours on the UCR Library's website, and I'll make sure I put that link in the chat box for you. Now, second, everyone is muted. However, throughout our conversation this evening, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to use your chat box, and our moderator will get to those as they start to come in. Now, at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, Dr. Romina Robles Ruvalcaba. Dr. Robles Ruvalcaba is an assistant professor of history at UC Merced. She is a specialist in modern Latin American history with a focus on rural Mexico. Besides teaching Latin American and Mexican history, she has also taught undergraduate and graduate courses on history and literature, environmental history, women and religion, Chicano and Latino history, and critical social theory.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? I hope so. Hi, thank you, Janine, for that presentation. I would like to thank the audience, the presenters, and in particular, UC Riverside and all of the other sponsors for helping us come together in this event. It's a wonderful day to come together, actually. Before I introduce our presenters, I wanted to give you guys a brief presentation of the Mexican Revolution, and in particular, the question of women around it. The Mexican Revolution that raged from 1910 to 1920 was the 20th century's first social revolution. It was a civil war that engulfed most of Mexico, from the north, led by General Francisco Villa, to the south, commanded by the army of General Emiliano Zapata. Over 2 million people perished in the bloody struggle, both at the battlefront, but also from epidemics and famine. One of the most significant results of the revolution was the Constitution of 1917, which codified social rights, with the areas of labor, land tenure, and education being perhaps the most salient features. While historians have examined key revolutionaries involved in the war front, the emphasis on the role of women has not been as ample, unfortunately. Even though approximately 500,000 women died in the revolution, they were discarded as a group from the language of the new social rights being codified in the new Constitution of 1917. Because of the prevailing idea that women were, with few exceptions, incapable of participating in Mexico's political life. Yet Mexican women were central social actors throughout all phases of the Mexican Revolution. Women did not just cook and clean, but participated in the armed struggle as soldiers, also known as soldaderas or adelitas, and even as lieutenants and colonels. In the ideological front, women also fervently and courageously were a part of the intellectual precursors of the revolution, working and writing around questions of labor and the injustice suffered by workers, like we saw in the case of Juana Belén Gutiérrez in Guanajuato. When thinking about the Mexican Revolution's legacy, the shift in gender relations is among one of the most important for the sweeping way in which it brought women into the national light. It is important that those who teach the Mexican Revolution study and acknowledge the central role that women played in the social movement of national liberation and anti-colonial ferment. I hope that you can enjoy today a visual commemoration and recognition of the women who fought alongside men. But it is also a tribute to the last living soldadera, Leandra Becerra Lumbreras, who Nao Bustamante, one of our presenters, met and interviewed in 2015. Moving from the historical context, which I can probably go on for hours and hours, I would like to now take a moment to briefly introduce our two presenters, Nao Bustamante and Jennifer Doyle. Nao Bustamante is a professor at the USC Roski School of Art and Design. There, she also serves as the director of the MFA in art. Nao Bustamante's precarious practice encompasses performance art, video installation, filmmaking, sculpture, and writing. Bustamante has presented in galleries, museums, universities, and underground sites around the world. In 2020, Bustamante's forthcoming 360-degree film titled The Wooden People received a producing grant from the Mikey Kelly Foundation and will be presented at the Red Cat in 2021. Bustamante's new project, titled Bloom, is the redesign of the speculum, and it will be supported by the COLA Award and the Art Pace Residency. Bustamante is also an alum of the San Francisco Art of Institute, and in 2020, she was awarded an honorary doctorate degree from there. Our other presenter, Jennifer Doyle, is a professor of English at UCR. She teaches American Studies in the English department and has worked at UCR for over 20 years. She is the author of Sex Campus Security, published in 2015. Hold It Against Me, Difficulty and Emotion in Contemporary Art, published in 2013, and Sex Objects, Art and the Dialectics of Desire. She's also a curator and curated Nao Bustamante's Soldadera for the Vincent Price Art Museum in 2015. She has also been a guest curator for the Broad Museum and is a member of the Board of Directors for Human Resources in Los Angeles, which is an interdisciplinary art space in Chinatown. And without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Nao Bustamante and Jennifer Doyle, who will engage in a sort of dialogic presentation for our delight. They will be speaking to one another as Nao Bustamante takes us through this wonderful exhibition that she prepared for us. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our presenters. Here we go.
Thank you for that.
Hi, everybody.
Hi now.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Romina.
It's so good to see you, and it's so nice to have been introduced by a proper historian of the Mexican Revolution, as Nao and I both came to the subject from outside that discipline, and partly through sort of our different interactions with the story of the Mexican Revolution, but especially through images of women who were on the front lines of the Mexican Revolution, but also impacted as members of communities that were torn up inside out and mobilized. So those of you who are joining us, Nao is actually installing and opening an exhibition in which she's sharing work that was developed around a residency at UCR in 2015, when Nao was engaging with materials that were in UCR's special collections. And I'm gonna just turn the floor over to Nao so she can take us through the exhibition and tell us about that work, and then I'll come back in.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks everybody for being here. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm in a gallery, so there is competing noise of my work around me that I can't seem to turn off or lower. And it's also very echoey in here, as you can tell. It's a brand new gallery. It's called SA Exhibitions, and the director, Mauricio Hector Pineda, curated the show. And the installation, I just want to thank him and the installation team, Tom Dunn, and of course, my project director, Marcus Quila-Nazario, who's absolutely amazing artist himself. And of course, Jennifer, I want to thank you for originally believing in the project and helping me to see this work to fruition that is here in the space. And thank you to UCR Special Collections for all the special help you've given me over the years in helping me to make the work, and also helping me to, well, you've given me different moments with the exhibition. I've been able to engage the special collections to bring in actual artifacts into the exhibition. This time I'm in a gallery that's a little bit smaller, and we decided that the artifacts were actually already present in the film. So I'm gonna take you, I'm afraid to go too far outside because I might lose connection, but what I will say is that I am now in Santa Ana at the Santa Ana Arts Collective building where the essay exhibitions is located. And I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit. There's graphic. We're projecting the Soldadera film to the outside, but right here, as you come in, as usual, the Soldaderas are confronting you. And these Soldaderas are based off of images from the archive, and they're basically dresses and coats from the Edwardian period that were very popular in Mexico at the time. And I have them circling, watching each other's back. And these two in the back, you don't really quite see until you come into the gallery and walk around. These are all made from Kevlar, which is a bullet-resistant material. Here we have a dress that's more indigena, more from the region of Oaxaca. And basically, we also have something that looks more like a child. It's like a riding coat, and it's based on an image that I saw in the archives. Now, apparently, what would be happening is that these women and different people would be going from town to town. As people would leave their homes, they would be collecting clothes and other things that they needed to keep the revolution going, which was, you know, agrarian, based on wanting to make the public literate. And partly that's why we don't have a lot of stories or firsthand experiences of women who fought, who were nurses, who were comfort women, who were fighters during the Mexican Revolution. So from there, we can move towards rebozo, which is also made from Kevlar. And this object here is something that you could essentially wrap around yourself if you needed to shelter yourself from gunfire in that era. These dresses are not made to be able to stop bullets from the contemporary guns, which you would need several layers of Kevlar to do that. But these dresses will stop guns that were more typically used during the Mexican Revolution, 9mm slugs and that kind of thing. Now, you might be asking yourselves, how do you know that? How would you know? Well, it's because I tested the first dress. And so as we continue to walk in the gallery, we will see a monitor that shows a test video of when I went with a historical gun dealer and shot the first dress with guns that were historically correct and typically used in the Mexican Revolution. So we're just getting ready to shoot one here. This is from upstate New York, where I was living at the time. And there I just shot the, oh, I think we're getting to this point where so that's me and Edminio shooting guns at the dresses. And here's the dress on display, laying in state. This was the original dress that I made, and here are the bullets that I used, and here's one of the slugs. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a slug embedded directly in the Kevlar, and when it stopped the bullet, it kind of exploded like a cartoon. The material. Because the way Kevlar works is that it's not so thick that it will stop something, but it's woven in such a way that the impact will disperse and therefore stop the projectile coming at it through dispersing the impact rather than like something being so thick that it stops it, right? So we're almost done here with this very brief walkthrough, and then we'll go back and discuss some of these works. So part of this story led me, and I think maybe, Jennifer, wasn't it you who put this on my Facebook?
Yes, it was somebody posted it originally on my Facebook because it was like a Daily Mail story. So it was a story in a British tabloid, and it was an English friend of mine. And it was about the oldest woman in the world and how she never married and had children by a bunch of different men and liked chocolate. And that made them think of me for some reason. And then I read this story, and it was the story of Leandra, who was the last living Soldadera. And I sent it to Nao immediately because I was like, we have to go, you have to go meet her and do it soon, because the world's oldest person is not a title one tends to hold for very long.
Yes. Yeah, and that was, it took us a little while to pull it together to go and meet her. We did meet her in, I think it was January of 2015, and she ended up passing in April following that. The family was very sweet. They sent me some images and thanked me for coming and documenting Leandra. So Leandra Becerra Lumbreras, she has her own Wikipedia page. You can look her up. She is the oldest person in the world at the time of filming, and she was the last survivor of the Mexican Revolution. And I have to say, my crew who went, Ellison Kelly, who shot the video, Maria Castellano, who helped set it up in Guadalajara. Well, she lived in Zapopan near Guadalajara. Marcus Quilanazario, who went, and also Moy Medina, who came as a historian to help us out, and also to help with the questioning and translation of the family. So I'm going to show you this work that is now a tribute to Leandra. And basically, it's a little bit of a riff of a VR situation. It's really kind of to be viewed more as a sculpture now because of COVID. It's very different to ask people to get in here. But you can enter, and you can see in a kind of 3D space, Leandra. I'm going to show you another video so you could see. But when you sit down here, there's this Kevlar stool that has a replica of a needlepoint that Leandra did. That's a peacock. I'm gonna just try to show that to you. And when you sit down, so in the video, Leandra's clapping, and when you sit down to view the work, there's like a booty bass beat in the stool, which is the same as Leandra's clapping. And I posted the video in another media player on the outside so that you could get a look at her. So that's Leandra. That's how she was dressed. That's what her bedroom wall looked like. We didn't do any art direction or anything like that. In fact, we spent the day asking her questions and kind of more documentary style. And originally I was gonna do some kind of thing where we turned her into like an Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of hologram. But then at the end of the day, she kept clapping out this rhythm. And at the end of the day, she wanted to keep going. And she just laid in bed like that, in that kind of position. And I think it was Moises Medina, who said, well, we were there, oh my God, she looks like a chacmul, which is this prehistoric figure that is typically thought of to be a figure that's like a warrior figure between life and death, who sort of functions as an escort for warriors into the next place. So the whole experience of meeting Leandra was a lot like meeting a religious figure, really. Like everyone in the neighborhood knew who we were there to see. They called her Abuelita del Mundo, grandmother of the world. And her energy just like filled this back room where she was. And she didn't answer questions directly, but she would do these kind of poetic musings. So she would say things like, he came on a white horse. Father told us to run into the bushes. You know, so she had these kind of thoughts. We were asking her about the revolution, and she had these kind of snippets. And then so later, after the revolution, Leandra did end up asking for land and getting it, but lost it from a series of events. But she gifted me this chicken that she made around 1920, which is, we call it the post-revolutionary gallina. And it's a beautiful little chicken, and she made it with her hands. And she gifted it, so it's here as an artifact and as a kind of tribute to women supporting their family through doing work with their hands. It turns out a chicken and a peacocks and all these birds sort of ended up making their way into the work. The last piece I want to show you, it's a little difficult now because it's not quite dark enough, and we have this on a rear projection screen, which is projecting out to the street and onto this beautiful scenery that's in front of it, in real scenery, which are these beautiful cactus gardens that they have here. So it's kind of an awesome foregrounding for the film. This film is called Soldadera, and it's based on a Eisenstein film that was never finished. We ended up finding the script. Actually, one of the film scholars at UCR turned me on to the script. Can you remind me his name right now, Jennifer?
Yeah, that's Dr. Jim Tobias.
Yes, thank you, Jim Tobias. Sorry, I'm thinking a million thoughts at once right now, Jim. So Jim Tobias turned me on to this script. He said, oh, did you know Eisenstein wrote a script called Soldadera? It's like one of the most famous unfinished films in the world. And I said, no, I had no idea. So it was actually pretty easy to find the script. And I went ahead and shot it based on the script. And we used the dresses on the actors and actresses. And we actually managed to get a baby because there was a baby in the script. I can't remember. That was like one of the students. I don't remember how we got the baby, but we did have a baby and a live chicken at UCR we were shooting with. And, you know, friends and other artists and UCR students, so many people pitched in. I think Ben Pizer shot this. I think he was the DP on this. And we had such an amazing time making this film together. And we ended up using all of the archival stills as the backdrop for the film. So we shot it all on green screen, and then we used the archival stills as the backdrop for this film. Which was a really wonderful way to engage with the archive. And the actual, and the sound score, which is really fantastic, was done by a sound artist named Cadet. And so I just want to give her a shout out. But so many people worked on this project. It's unbelievable. And that the work is still kind of here, it's still touring. It went to upstate New York. It just came back from Bellas Artes in Mexico City. It's been, gosh, where else has it been? I guess San Francisco Contemporary Jewish Museum, parts of it, not, you know, it's been a kind of ongoing struggle to actually get the whole work up at once because, you know, people really like to get, oh yes, yeah, Marcus is telling you Marfa. Yeah, that's where actually had a really amazing showing in Marfa because Rafa Esparza selected this to be part of a collective group of people he was presenting at Ballroom Marfa. And we installed the whole show with his adobe bricks as the floor. So that installation was just gorgeous. Every time I'm at a new place, I have to kind of, you know, work with the space to see what's possible. And here we have more like you know, it's like definitely a really beautiful brand new gallery setting. So here we are in this space, and I'm just gonna show you a little bit more. Oh, so you can email swayprojects@gmail.com. That's see what you started. So SYWS projects at gmail.com to make an appointment and come in and see this work for yourself with your household alone. You need to protect yourselves, people. You need to stay protected. This work is really about protection. It's about time traveling and protecting people, protecting the women who fought in the Mexican Revolution.
I've been, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in here.
Yes.
I've been thinking about, so this project started with that first Kevlar dress, the one that you took out in the shooting range. And I remember when I first heard you talk about it, I was really struck by that combination of, well, I guess security and vulnerability, right? That you're securitizing this imagined body, right, with the Kevlar dress, but that it's a Kevlar dress, right, not a bulletproof vest, not a military uniform as we're used to kind of thinking about what that might look like. The image of a dress and conjures a kind of feminine form of vulnerability, like the tension around that. And then I've been thinking about that tension from a totally new angle around masks and the weird like gender dynamics that have been around, like resistance to masking and like what that's about, like vulnerability and exposure. I mean, I know that's like a very different kind of subject than the historical context that you're looking at right now, but that, I don't know, these images.
I mean, yes and no, because you might recall this project was started originally because I had been on this TV show called Work of Art. And after I got off the show, I had this kind of response to all the negative attention I was getting in the mainstream, particularly around my body. And so I was kind of imagining making this full-length Kevlar or some other protective material dress in order to metaphorically protect myself from the kind of slings and arrows, that one encounters with trolls and that kind of thing. And at the time, Marcus Quillan-Nazario invited me to be in a show called From Chewbacca to Zapata, Re-envisioning the Mexican Revolution. And I didn't really have any ideas for it, but I did tell him about this dress. And as I started, co-curated with Pilar Perez, thank you. And so as we were talking about the project and as I started researching the Mexican Revolution, this was like way back. This was like, I don't know, 2011 or something. I started finding these women fighting brigades. And they were, in fact, wearing these dresses exactly like what I imagined.
Yeah.
So sometimes, the confluence of like the current moment with what you're kind of thinking about and researching about can bring about this other kind of moment. I have this process that I call my side mind. My students are very familiar with this concept, which is like, there's another mind going on over here. And once in a while, as an artist, I can look at it.
Yeah.
I can go, whoop.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to take a second to screen share and share some of the images from the archive so people get a sense of the landscape that your side mind was wandering through.
I'm gonna take this moment to go in the office.
Great. So one of the things that I learned by engaging, with Nao's work and with this project and with the materials in UCR's archive, sorry, I was going to take me a second to set this up in a way that people can really enjoy looking at it. Sorry, presenter view. I'm like, sorry, there it is. Okay. So, here is just this is actually a still from the film, and it's a screenshot of it's like a title section. I think the title, like the actual typography, it might be lifted from well, anyway, sorry, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole about that Eisenstein film, but the important thing is that the image that you're looking at are women who are doing the laundry, right? And that a lot of women who were traveling with troops were doing so as what would be called quartering troops, meaning they were taking care of food, clothing, setting up camp. They're deeply involved in actually facilitating war in the reproduction of everyday needs within the context of war. The photographic archive at UCR is really extensive, and it's really kind of like, it's partly extensive because it's and I mean, I think it's up until the Vietnam War, it was the most documented, most photographed conflict. And it's partly because it lasted for so long, 10 years, and it was, there were so many fronts, and they were all very accessible. And so there was what was called, I think, a Kodak army of photographers who were traveling to document the war. And there was an international market in terms of newspapers for images of the Mexican Revolution, and intermingled with
and postcards.
What?
And postcards.
Postcards, carte de visite, like souvenirs. And one of the things that is interesting is that intermingled with the photographs of things around the front and warlike activity were quite ordinary activities, or like a landscape, or it would be like a roll of film, and some of it would be Mexican things that you might expect to see in this context, and then like family photographs, right? Things that were like just mixed in the roll. So the archive is really interesting, and now drew extensively from it. I thought I just, juxtaposing a kind of iconic image that now uses in the show and in the film. So you can see like this kind of at least 3 different layers, right? One is exactly like the postcard, the souvenir photograph of, and it's got written on it Zapatistas and in quotation marks, which is kind of odd when you start looking at how they're marked. And then you see the use of the image in the film in the background with the dresses, where you can see, in essence, I think it's a different dress that resonates more directly with the shirt that the woman on the left of the photograph is wearing. But you can see the relationship between the dresses themselves and the photographs here. This is from one of my favorite sequences of Soldadera, the 4-minute looping film. And so in the background, again, is one of these, photographs from UCR's archives. And this is at the moment of like victory, right? And you have these 2 women dancing, wearing the dresses, shooting guns in the air, and it cuts between these, where they're in the foreground to where they're actually dancing in the middle of the crowd, like deep embedded in the photograph. It's one of my favorites.
I should briefly just jump in and say, in this image, it's Crystal Sepulveda and Rosana Martinez, and other women who played the Soldaderas. Arlene, I'm trying to remember Arlene's last name. She was such a wonderful student, and she's kind of leading the pack in the final image. And Sandra de la Loza is in there. And all these people just kind of came together and gave of their time for this project. It was such a fun moment. But I should say also that all of these images I had to interpret the script.
Right.
So in the script, it might say something like the Soldaderas celebrate and fire their guns in the air, or something very simple like that. I mean, all of the text from the film was directly taken from the script. And then of course we translated it into Russian and had Spanish subtitles, because it was Eisenstein who made the film. And
let me give a little bit of context for it. So now it's talking about Sergei Eisenstein's unfinished film that was a portrait of Mexico, like from the dawn of time up to his contemporary moment. And the only segment of the film for which there was no filmed footage was a chapter on the Mexican Revolution, and that chapter was called Soldadera. And so now decided to basically finish his film for him, or for really your purposes. But, I just wanted to make sure people kind of understood the context for that. So, and then I just have a couple other images so you could get a sense more of like kind of the raw photograph. And in the archive, and you know, some of them were in states where there was like overexposure or the like, and that and she was just working with them as they were, and really beautiful and lovely ways. This is just a stunning image.
One of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can see that image in the background here, right? And then this is just so folks get another look at Leandra, and we'll share on when this recording is posted, there'll be a reading list with links to articles in which you can see clips of some of the video work. And this is the peacock needlepoint that Nao was referring to earlier, and it was displayed at VPAM at Vincent Price Art Museum in a case with photographs that UCR library actually loaned to us, which was really great. I think, that was my last image. Okay, so I'll stop.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to kind of note, also thanks Marcus for posting some of the names and thank yous in the chat. My brain is like mush right now from installing, but one of the things that you'll notice when I walked around the gallery and showed the dresses in the photos from the first exhibition, they're bright yellow, they're acid yellow. And the material Kevlar, it's interesting because the material itself is so sturdy that I can, I could take a lighter or match. I mean, I've tried this. I've tried to burn the, material. I've tried to do all kinds of things to the material, and it's very sturdy material. It's very fire resistant, very fireproof. They have different levels of Kevlar. So, for knives, they have Kevlar just for knives, Kevlar for bullets, that kind of thing, Kevlar for boats. But the Kevlar was never intended to be exposed to the light. And so the light totally washes out the color. Kevlar is intended to be layered, placed inside of other material, nylon, to be epoxied for the bottom of boats, but it's never intended to actually be exposed to the light. So over time, the dresses have gone from an acid yellow to kind of a golden pale yellow, and they're really turning into a gorgeous color. But it would be great to get them in some kind of conservation where they could be cared for properly and out of my hands.
So we have some questions.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I'm picking one out from the list because it's a pretty great question. And so you had talked earlier about meeting Leandra, Ms. Bustamante, this is a question. You're meeting a 127-year-old veteran of the Mexican Revolution must have been incredible. How did this connection impact your creative process? Were there any surprises in what she shared with you?
Well, I have to say it was more of a feeling. And when I was in the room with her, I felt like I was in, people say this all the time and it's kind of a media confusion, but I felt like I was in another film while being in the room with her. And I was so thankful that I was an artist at that moment, that my art would actually lead me to this experience of meeting Leandra. Sorry, I get a little choked up every time I talk about her because it was so special, and the kind of love that just emanated from her, and to think about her journey, that she had gone through that journey for her children and had like 3 children during the Mexican Revolution, following the revolution and being a leader and standing in line with her sons and saying, this is the son of the revolution and I demand my land. And that was sort of the story that her family told us. And her family were so gracious. And, she had gone through this because she was so old. Her family had lost her for a while. They didn't know where she was. And the people who were taking care of her died. All her children died. And then other, family members apparently, stole everything that was valuable from her. And she ended up finally with some grandchildren who themselves were, I think, in their, 60s and 70s. And so it was just really remarkable to kind of experience her, because I had been sort of in this archive day and night for days and days and days, and I probably looked at like, I don't even know how many thousands of images. and always looking, you know, with a mind to looking for the women, looking purposely for them, and seeing what they were doing. And that's why the few images that I have are just so special to me. But what happened was, after being in that archive and then meeting Leandra and like touching her skin, putting my hand on her arm, I just felt like I was time traveling by doing that. And it kind of brought into the work this other element of time travel, which was the idea that these dresses were a kind of time travel memorial. They were a memorial to imagine traveling back in time and being able to protect these women who were so valiant in their efforts.
It's me again, your moderator. I want to move on to a couple more questions from the audience, but kind of selfishly would like to kind of put one in there for both of you guys. But there are many questions, and I don't know if we'll be able to get to them, but I'm very interested in like the deep knowledge that you both have of the different art movements from which we, you know, form a large primary source base for us. But maybe we won't have time for that. But so I'll just ask, you know, as a work such as this is potentially reproducing official narratives of masculinity in general and the Mexican Revolution in particular. What are the places, aesthetic or otherwise, in this work that might express this slippage, but also harness it into what Jean Franco coins, she says, the ways, quote, the ways of aligning gender politics and other forms of struggle without subordinating gender issues and without sacrificing politics, that she says is a characteristic of Latin American feminist. And I have more questions, but I'll ask
That's
you.
such a juicy question, and I'm going to be a little selfish in response and say I want to kind of respond to that as a critic, and also as someone who's long admired Nao's work and felt engaged to, you know, a need to think with it and to sit with it. One of the things I find, it was, I don't want to say it was overwhelming exactly, but like when you move through this particular exhibition and this conjunction of works, you feel saturated with like sounds. In the Vincent Price Art Museum, smell, because there were guava fruit installed on the chacmul piece for Leandra. It set the sounds of birds. And you heard this this drum beat, which was actually key to Leandra's hands. And what I feel like I can almost.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, I don't think I've watched that video in a while, but I still feel that rhythm. And that clapping both felt like, I don't want to say it was militaristic, but organizing in the way that a march or a drum beat, right, is organizing, but it was organizing at its own pace. And then there's this sense of urgency that was kind of accompanying your experience of everything, because you're looking at these Kevlar dresses, bullets, the 4-minute Soldadera film loop has a sense of kind of crisis and urgency to it. And then you get these wafts of this kind of gentle humor, or like the little post-revolutionary chicken. Like you get these moments of things that are these everyday bits of like kind of tenderness, but also like chickens they're essential for everything, but they're also funny and strange, like as things. Well, they're not things, but when they're rendered into things, there you go, right? Like, so there's this really strange tone to the work. And that's actually something that cuts across a lot of Nao's practice, right? And it's one of the reasons why many of us turn to affect theory to try to figure out how to put into words what we're experiencing around the work. But for me, this is one of the things that's made the work feel important as a meditation on the Mexican Revolution and the revolutionary movements more generally, right? Yeah, I'll stop there, so.
Well, I think also that's beautiful. Thank you, Jennifer. I mean, I think also to the question, thinking through sort of issues around gender, masculinity in relationship to the work, mean, I think that, me growing up, growing up, my identity was Mexican American and Chicana. Those were kind of the words that we use. And we were very connected to this idea of the accomplishments of the Mexico experience. And, everyone I knew who was Mexican had somebody who rode with Zapata or Pancho Villa in their family. And a lot of people came and talked to me about the experiences or stories they had of women who were part of the Mexican Revolution and from their families. And, it's funny, I don't know, like kind of a classic, Latin household or something. There's a kind of, machoism with a lot of the male identified persons, but then often the women tend to run things like, they kind of, it's almost like there's this feeling of like, you don't want to hurt the feelings of the macho by pushing him too much, but you're behind the scenes kind of taking care of things. At least that's how it was in my family. I know everyone has different experiences and this is very generalizing, but the question kind of forces me into thinking through binary ideas between masculine and feminine, when in fact, I don't really think, I mean, I don't have gender dysphoria as a kind of a textbook case, but I have always felt somewhat disembodied from my gender as a woman. Like I kind of, as a child, I sort of always just sort of looked out of my eyes and thought about how people are perceiving me. And I think it's taken me all these years, like up till this age and this practice, to start sort of embracing my womanhood, which I know sounds a little crazy since I've done all this work about women and women's body, and I continue to do so. And I'm so engaged in sort of the feminist practice, in a feminist practice. But yeah, it's like, it's weird the way history has posited women in relationship to the development of the world, which is fucking nuts because everyone fucking comes out of one of these vajayjays. So let's pull ourselves together, people, and understand, like creative power and how that happens. And it's not like, I'm not like a man hater or whatever. Ask all some of my best friends are male. So I'm just saying that the way that history erases women, I think, was more to the point of the project and less about sort of gender relations or sort of the positions that men or women hold in society, but more just thinking through how women continuously get erased from historical events and how nuts that is. I mean, that's crazy nuts to me. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Even if I were a man, it wouldn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. So, but one thing I wanted to talk about briefly was like, every time we seem to mount this show, Marcus and I were talking about this the other day, there's always some like crazy historical event happening. This time it was the inauguration, and last time when we were at Bellas Artes in Mexico City, we were getting ready to leave our hotel and go to the museum. And there was this huge women's march that surrounded Bellas Artes. And in fact, they had to close down the museum before we even left to go to the museum. And everyone who was inside was sort of locked inside, and everyone who was outside was outside. And so we had to wait a while to go to the museum. But on the way, there were all these like this incredible graffiti and altars to women who had suffered violence in Mexico and other parts of Latin America, and broken bus shelters and sort of artifacts of these wild protests. So it's been interesting to kind of install this show in relationship to whatever is happening around us in the world also, and to think through some of the examples of the women and, who can bring us strength at times like this. And so, yeah, I just want to say that.
Thank you so much, Nao and Jennifer. I want to make another 10 questions, but I'm going to come here on the chat with a couple of questions that are coming from our audience. And I'm not sure from who's asking, but she says, what are some commonly unknown things about soldaderas? I guess on top of what you guys have been already interweaving, and are there any misperceptions about them? And I just I'll include another one, because they're kind of related. Gloria asked, thank you so much for this talk and walkthrough. I was wondering if you could talk about the rebozo and the way Soldadera dressed was both utilitarian and conveying a type of femininity, and how that translated into your artistic practice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for those wonderful questions. I mean, I think one of the things that might be a misconception about soldaderas, a lot of people think that soldaderas were like comfort women, prostitutes, that kind of thing. But, they really kept the revolution going. I mean, they were like the people that followed along with the army. Sometimes they fought directly in the army or led brigades. Oftentimes the soldaderas would stay behind in their village, and they'd protect the village from other marauding groups of mostly men. It was a kind of a free-for-all style war with like little pockets of people fighting. My own family has a story about how I have two great uncles that were on either side of the divide, and that would come to the hacienda and make peace and that kind of thing, and recharge and then go off and fight on their different sides. I don't know if it's true, but that's one story from my family. The Soldadera women, they were the nurses. They washed clothes, they cooked, they did provide comfort. Some of them were wives also, some of them were fighters. And one of the things we learned about when we met Leandra was that they made miniatures of aspects of their kitchen to take with them on the road. So they would have miniature stones to grind corn, and they would have miniature pots. And they just, it was like they created and made their own, essentially their camping gear, and they would carry their cocina on their backs. And a lot of times, the rebozo acts as a kind of, protector, but it also is used to carry things. It's also used to wrap your children in. And so I really love that idea. I mean, it's my favorite piece in the show really is the Kevlar rebozo, because I just love that symbolism of sort of being able to wrap yourself and others and protect and shield in any situation. So thank you for those questions. Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
Well, just that what you were describing about the miniatures goes to the title of Moises Medina's essay, which is a writing that was inspired by meeting Leandra, and it's called The Tiny Things They Carried. And that's a reference to a classic in war literature called The Things They Carried. And so he's, he works from that story, and we'll have a link to that. That's, and it really is a tremendous piece of writing. And it's also like one of the things that grew out of this, this project, was, that it was the experience of learning how to write with your artwork, and then also the history that your artwork is invoking, or providing a kind of a threshold or speculative point of entry into. And that was a really interesting aspect of it. But I did want to say too, that this goes back now to things that you've been saying, that whenever I did walkthroughs at the Vincent Price Art Museum, people would come not only with their family stories, but also with photographs and postcards and things. So personal family souvenirs that were attached to those stories. So they were, and that always moved me, that it's like kind of bringing their things to be in the same room with your things, as a way of feeling like sense of connection to that history.
Yeah, there's so much more space in this work or in this topic to make new work, or for others to make work around it. I definitely want to encourage people to explore the topic, and especially if you have family members that were part of the Mexican Revolution, even just getting and finding out stories from your own family, I think would be a really awesome experience.
Thank you so much. I wonder if we have time for another question, just the next 5 minutes. It's I think a
Sure, go ahead.
that's one. It's can you speak more about your archival research from Gabriela Almendares, and how did this process differ from your past work, which is quite extensive, but if you could call it.
Now, before you start, let me just say one thing, which is one of the reasons why I was like, I really wanted to see this happen, is that I'm a firm believer in what's called practice-based research. And these are kind of long-term research projects that artists stage, right? Where people are manifesting the results of a research project, and you have a creative dimension to the research and a creative end kind of product of that research. And it's really important. And I think this is a fantastic manifestation of that. Sorry, I wanted to just give that preface.
No, thank you so much for that, Jennifer. I think, yeah, it's interesting because I've been sort of rolling around in my head. I tend to sort of think about projects as a kind of flash that come into my mind, and then they just sit in my head and roll around for some years. Even some projects come quickly, others really sit in there and roll around. And right now I've been thinking about, because I'm sort of embarking on different sort of works. I'm redesigning the speculum right now, which is engaging a lot of research. And I'm also working on a VR script, which is more from my imagination, but also involves research. And I think before really getting into researching as a way of producing art, I had a sense of myself more as a sponge, like more of somebody who's just absorbing their surroundings, absorbing the media and the world around me. And then I would sort of kind of compress that into an image or performance that would somehow like punch the lights out of that kind of frameworks that were surrounding me and I felt were kind of oppressive in some way to me. And I think now I'm much more interested in, I wouldn't say a scholarly pursuit, because I know so many scholars and I know the kind of work that goes into that, but more like an engagement with an archive or history or information as a way of feeding into my own mental process. So it might be that I'm researching the Soldaderas, but then my construction is really inspired by, but not adhering to a kind of preset of the information that I find before me. So it's definitely an engagement, but less of a scholarly pursuit, in that I'm not trying to create a historic reference. I'm trying to create a imagining. At one point, I think we were calling it a speculative reenactment as the framework for the film. And I end up having to make up a lot of frameworks in my life in order to fit my art into it and to present, because I'm the work that I'm doing now and have been doing, it has to exist in some ways. It just really crosses a lot of boundaries, and in some ways it doesn't always even fit into the art world. But I'm an artist, and that's the place that I inhabit, and so I'm really fortunate to have scholars like Jennifer take a look at my work, and UCR special collections to help me realize the work and allow me in those spaces. And also really grateful to places like SA Exhibitions that just say, yeah, let's bring this work to Santa Ana. Santa Ana needs to engage this work. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of months. I'm sure I'm going to be hearing some more stories about the Mexican Revolution coming through. I think I'm getting a call. One moment. Yep.
So some city people are here, but the mayor's not here.
Okay. So there are some city people here from Santa Ana to see the exhibition. So we'll see if the mayor shows up. I heard the mayor's coming. If he doesn't come tonight, then hopefully he'll come another day. I was surprised. So, it's all gravy from here. The work is up, and everything else is gravy.
Well, thank you for taking us through the show today. And I'm very excited, and I'm so glad the show's up for a while so people have a chance to make an appointment, see it in a safe way at their own pace.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Romina, for your lovely introduction.
Thank you, everyone who signed on.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer and Nao, and the audience members with the wonderful questions. There are some that we weren't unfortunately not able to get to. I have at least 10 more, like I said, but I think I will now pass on the baton to Janine. And thank you so much once again for accompanying us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Romina, for serving as a great moderator. Jennifer and Nao, thank you guys so much. This hour really flew by, and I'm glad you allowed the audience to get a sneak peek of the exhibition. So that was really great. As I said, as a reminder, the replay will be available within 48 hours on the UCR Library's website, and that link will be in the chat box for you. As Jennifer mentioned, there will also be an accompanying suggested readings for those of you that are interested in reading more on this topic, and also some of the images that were shared tonight. Those will be available to you as well. Now, if you would like to learn about different ways that you can continue to support UCR Library collections, our students, and research, I urge you to visit our giving page, and I will put that link in the chat box for you as well. Once again, thank you for being here, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.